sahano bhunaktu, sahavavahai, tejasvinavadhai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. May the divine being look over us lovingly as a mother and father. May the divine being support and nourish us as a mother and father. May we have the strength and skill to study together the art of spirituality. May no misunderstandings arise amongst us. Om, peace, peace, peace be unto us and to all sentient beings everywhere. To all beings everywhere, for that matter. So we are still reading in the first chapter of Jnana Yoga, which is Swami Vivekananda's talk in
Brother Shankara.
Yes.
I want to ask, you keep freezing. Is anybody else seeing him freezing, or is it just me?
No, I am experiencing.
Yeah, I'm seeing that too.
Well, I just got a
I'm seeing
I
it
just
too.
got a notification that my I just saw something on the screen that said my internet connection is unstable.
Unstable. Do you have other things open? A lot of other things open, because you can close everything down.
Oh my.
Just close your browser. Mostly anything that's pulling on the internet. It doesn't have to be pages or something. You can leave it up.
I can't do that from
Oh, right.
this, do that. Freeze or just the picture?
Everything freezes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, doesn't get too bad.
We could, if it does, we could, well, I don't know what we can do. Let's just, are you sure that you're on the right internet connection? You know how sometimes it'll.
I was. Let me. Well, now I don't know how to get back to y'all.
We can see you.
Okay, well.
At least I can.
We'll have to just live with that then. I can't see you. I don't know how to get back to the view that was there. All right.
Is Zoom down on your dock where all your little program icons are?
Yeah.
Just
Oh,
click
there
it.
you are.
Okay, there you go.
Thank you, Cindy.
It seems to be okay now too.
Okay. I didn't, well, anyway. All right. Here is We'll start here again. We'll start back a little bit. The lower types of humanity in all nations find pleasure in the senses, while the cultured and educated find it in thought, in philosophy, in arts and sciences. Spirituality is still a higher plane. The subject being infinite, that plane is the highest, and the pleasure there is the highest for those who can appreciate it. So even on the utilitarian ground that man is to seek for pleasure, he should cultivate religious thought, for it is the highest pleasure that exists. Now, Swamiji says this, and for anyone who pursues spiritual disciplines, spiritual practices, it proves itself. As Krishna says, sour toil at first, and then nectar. Swami Brahmananda, the spiritual son of Sri Ramakrishna, said, light, more light, is there no end to it? And if we read in that book, Love Poems from God, the testimony of the saints, we see that they come to exist in a state of being that embodies what Swami Vivekananda says here. So even on the utilitarian ground that man is to seek for pleasure, he should cultivate religious thought, for it is the highest pleasure that exists. Thus, religion as a study seems to me to be absolutely necessary. We can see it in its effects. It is the greatest motive power that moves the human mind. No other idea can put into us the same mass of energy as the spiritual. What does Swamiji mean? It is the greatest motive power that moves the human mind. No other ideal can put into us the same massive energy as the spiritual. What he means is there is this great power behind the mind, but we have to remove the obstacles to its emergence. And when we do, then we feel it. And you can feel it in something as simple as chanting Jai Shri Durga for a while, or chanting your mantra. If you are dedicated to your mantra, you'll feel, after a time of chanting it, you feel this power emerging. You feel this something that isn't there in any other instance. So no other ideal can put into us the same massive energy as the spiritual. It is all of those lower concerns and preoccupations that are the impediment to it. So when those are removed, that's when we feel that motive power, that mass of energy that Swamiji is talking about. And it's why he could accomplish such amazing things. Because, as he said, by the time he was 16 years old, he had eliminated most of the impediments to manifesting that energy. So Swamiji goes on to say, so far as human history goes, it is obvious to all of us that this has been the case and that its powers are not dead. I do not deny that men, on simply utilitarian grounds, can be very good and moral. Yes, that's true. And yet it is, in its essence, not satisfying just to be good and moral. And that's why people reach for something beyond when they are doing their goodness and their morality. They want to have a plaque put on the wall, or the wing of the hospital named after them, or have an award given to them or something. This is the tragedy of trying to be good and moral on its own, rather than having goodness and morality being the result of your spiritual practices. So Swamiji says, I do not deny that men on simply utilitarian grounds can be very good and moral. There have been many great men in this world, perfectly sound, moral, and good simply on utilitarian grounds. But the world movers, men who bring, as it were, a mass of magnetism into the world, whose spirit works in hundreds and in thousands, whose life ignites others with spiritual fire, such men we always find have that spiritual background. Their motive power came from religion. Religion is the greatest motive power for releasing that infinite energy, which is the birthright and nature of every man, in building up character, in making for everything that is good and great, in bringing peace to others and peace to one's own self. Religion is the highest motive power, and therefore ought to be studied from that standpoint. So that's the standpoint from which we're studying it. This is not an intellectual exercise. This is not to gain knowledge that we can file away and say, yes, now I know that. The reason for pursuing, as we're pursuing this evening, these spiritual ideas and ideals is to release the truth of our being, to release the truth of our true original nature from its bondage. And when that happens, as Swami Vivekananda points out in his talk, Christ the Messenger, we will each become, in time, a Christ. Now, I know that seems inconceivable. It certainly, in many moods, it seems inconceivable from here. But nevertheless, the Swami says, that is our destiny. And so that's what we're doing here. We're convincing ourselves, we're studying together the art of spirituality in order to convince ourselves that, yes, this is worth my time and effort, because what will happen is it will transform me. Now, many of us have seen the film Scrooge. I hope you've all seen the one made in 1951 that starred Alistair Sim. If you haven't, I highly recommend it for this upcoming holiday season. Just Google or go to YouTube and put in Scrooge, Alistair Sim, 1951. Scrooge and fear of people, fear of the future, and in a night, he is transformed through the grace of his former partner and three spirits that visit him. When you witness this beautiful transformation and what he becomes free of and what he becomes as a result of that freedom, it is a wonderful objectification of what Swamiji is saying here. Religion is the highest motive power, and therefore to be studied from that standpoint. These spirits that visit him are all religious figures of a kind. He's even visited by what in the Hindu or Sanatana Dharma context is called Yama, the god of death. Who puts the exclamation point on Scrooge's transformation. So it is for that transformation that we're doing this. Before we go on to Swamiji's conclusion of this talk, are there any comments or questions so far about what it is that we're doing here and why we're doing it, or anything else that has arisen in your mind, or any question you might want to ask?
I think Swamiji said perfectly, Brother Shankara. To me, I agree with every word in this last couple of paragraphs. Every word is so truthful.
Okay,
Something in the early.
very good.
Thank you.
So thank you. Anybody else? Thank you, Haima, for underlining that. That's excellent. Anyone else? Anything else? So Swamiji, from his point of view, having been trained by Sri Ramakrishna, now there's another pivot point in this talk about the necessity of religion. Now he's telling us how to go about making this a reality for ourselves. Religion must be studied on a broader basis than formerly. Religion must be studied on a broader basis than formerly. All narrow, limited, fighting ideas of religion have to go. All sect ideas and tribal or national ideas of religion must be given up. And we see how difficult that is. That's what's going on in the world right now. A teacher in France was beheaded because they showed these images of Muhammad that are found so offensive in this narrow way by Muslim extremists. What a horror. So exactly what Swamiji is talking about is still going on. This process is still underway. All sect ideas and tribal or national ideas of religion must be given up. That each tribe or nation should have its own particular God and think that every other is wrong is a superstition that should belong to the past. All such ideas must be abandoned. And if we look within ourselves, we'll find that we have some ideas that have to be abandoned. We'll find that there is some narrowness. We have some opinions about God based on what we've been taught, based on what we've been exposed to in our culture. They're there. And it's interesting, as I was mentioning Scrooge, when he awakens in the morning after his night of experiences with these three spirits, he sings this song. I don't know anything, I never did know anything. I don't know anything, all on a Christmas morning. So he has abandoned all his ideas that were imprisoning him. And he says, I'm so happy. I'm so happy. I don't deserve to be so happy. I just can't help it. That's what Swamiji meant by the greatest joy is in this religious experience. All such ideas must be abandoned. As the human mind broadens, its spiritual steps broaden too. The time has already come when a man cannot record a thought without its reaching to all corners of the earth. By merely physical means, we have come into touch with the whole world. So the future religions of the world have to become universal as wide. And you can see Swamiji was speaking quite prophetically here. He was living in the time of the telegraph and just the very most primitive beginnings of radio. But already he could see what this portended, what would happen. By merely physical means, we have come into touch with the whole world. So the future religions of the world have to become as universal, as wide. The religious ideals of the future must embrace all that exists in the world the religious ideals of the future must embrace all that exists in the world and is good and great, and at the same time have infinite scope for future development. Why? Why infinite scope for future development? Why no limitation? Because what we're studying, what our spiritual practices lead us to, is that infinitude. It can never be fixed. It can never be put into a form that will be perfect and forever. That's what the Swami is saying. It must have infinite scope for future development. All that was good in the past must be preserved, and the doors must be kept open for future additions to the already existing store. How do we know what should be preserved? Through our spiritual practices. This is how we come to know what it is that is good and great and must be preserved. We see it, we feel it, and the doors must be kept open for future additions to the already existing store. Religions must also be inclusive and not look down with contempt upon one another because their particular idea, their particular ideals of God are different. In my life, Swamiji speaking, in my life, I have seen a great many spiritual men, a great many sensible persons who, this is a remarkable statement he's making. Listen up. In my life, I have seen a great many spiritual men, a great many sensible persons who did not believe in God at all. That is to say, not in our sense of the word. Perhaps they understood God better than we can ever do. The personal idea of God, or the impersonal, the infinite, moral law, or the ideal man, these all have to come under the definition of religion. And when religions have become broadened, their power for good will have increased 100-fold. And we can see the pressure on all religions now to broaden. We see that the Catholic Church has a pope that is broadening their understanding and their acceptance. The Protestants are quarreling. Oh my God, they're quarreling about what is right and what is wrong and how to be. And great people like Jimmy Carter have left a lifelong membership in something called the Southern Baptist Convention, as did Bill Moyers, the great newsman and commentator, because of narrowness, because of their insistence on narrowness. So we're seeing this ferment going on. And of course, inevitably, this ferment leads to some bloodshed. Some bloodshed. It's because people become convinced that their ideas must prevail, and they will use the power of the gun to create that prevalence. When religions have become thus broadened, their power for good will have increased 100-fold. Religions, having tremendous power in them, have often done more injury to the world than good, simply on account of their narrowness and limitations. Even at the present time, we find many sects and societies with all the same ideas fighting each other. Because now notice the almost the same ideas, fighting each other because one does not want to set forth those ideas in precisely the same way. Their religions will have to broaden. Religious ideas will have to become universal, vast, and infinite. I just got that little unstable. Need anything again? Did everything come through? Anybody respond, please?
Yeah, you froze up and were.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can now. It was momentary. Are you
Even at the present time, we find sects and societies with almost the same ideas, fighting each other because one does not want to set forth those ideas in precisely the same way as another. Therefore, religions will have to broaden. Religious ideas will have to become universal, vast, and infinite. And then alone we shall have the fullest play of religion. For the power of religion has only begun to manifest in the world. If we look out into the world, we can see in this dark age that we live in, called the Kali Yuga, or the Iron Age, so many limitations are there. So much, when Swamiji talks about infinite, oh my God, there's just so much insistence on the finite now. We see it everywhere. Anything that wants to open out into the broader and the more expansive, the infinite, it's regarded with suspicion. It's regarded with it's regarded as something that must be quashed. So we're quarreling over small things, we as a human race. So I'm going to read that again. Religious ideas then alone we shall have the fullest play of religion, for the power of religion has only begun to manifest. Any number of times just in our lifetime. Big headlines on news magazines. Religion is dead. The atheists, the Dawkinses of this world, saying religion is finished. It's all a superstition. And Swamiji says, to me, it seems they have just begun to grow. The power of religion, broadened and purified, is going to penetrate every part of human life. Now, what a statement. The power of religion, broadened and purified, is going to penetrate every part of human life. Only not in this darkness. So Swamiji is talking about a time of transformation. So long as religion was in the hands of a chosen few or a body of priests, it was in temples, churches, books, dogmas, ceremonials, forms, and rituals. But when we come, now let's be mindful that these are, according to Swamiji, secondary details. Each soul is potentially divine. The goal of human life is to manifest this divinity through work, worship, psychic control, or philosophy. Take up one or more or all of these, and be free. That is the whole of religion. Then he lists these things: priests, temples, churches, books, dogmas, ceremonials, forms, and rituals, and says these are but secondary details. But when we come to the real spiritual universal concept, then and then alone, religion will become real and living. It will come into our very nature, live in our every movement, penetrate every pore of our society, and be infinitely more a power for good than it has ever been before. How does this happen? Swamiji says, but when we come to the real spiritual universal concept, then and then alone, religion will become real and living. It will come into our very nature, live in our every moment, penetrate every pore of our society, and be infinitely more a power for good than it has ever been before. The way this will happen is the transformation of each one of you. Each one of you. Through this study, through your spiritual practices, as you transform, you are the ones who will make this happen. It isn't something that will suddenly sweep through society. There will be fads and trends. Always there will be fads and trends. But that's not the point. There keeps appearing a note at the bottom of the screen. Can anyone tell me what that's about?
It's probably the chat where people are chatting. That's probably what it is, and it's been taken care of.
Okay. So before we go on, let's discuss this. Is this something that appeals to you? Is this something that you feel like you want to take up? Is this why you're doing this? Is that why you're here this evening? Because you feel that you can transform yourself and therefore become this power for good. Anyone?
Definitely, yes, Brother Shankara.
Why, Haima? Why is it that you feel that way?
We all need to transform from time to time as the world is changing, like today's announcement of popes about LGBTQ created some commotion in the Catholic community. They just announced it, the latest news, that he wants to treat all of them equal. They should be allowed to have every right, which is very true. So a lot of people don't think that it is right, but some of us at least were broadened ourselves. We agree with him. Things like those constantly changing. It's been there, LGBTQ, but they never came out because of the fear. Now they are coming out, and we need to embrace and honor every person on this earth. Everybody deserves the same rights as you and I. So we have to constantly change our mentalities, or whatever was taught when we were growing up. We need to test them in the universe and see whether my mom and dad really are right or wrong. Then you pick the right and drop the wrong. At the same time, respect your parents as parents. And that's so needed.
Thank you, Haima. That's it. There cannot be narrowness.
Yes.
Now, this is one form of narrowness. Religious communities not accepting everyone who is born into that community, even because of their orientation,
Right.
sexual orientation, and insisting that it's a disordered way of behaving. That's been typical Catholic response. So this is one ferment that's going on in the Catholic Church, and their Pope is leading them in this direction.
Yes.
But the question I'm posing is, does this appeal to you? Does this appeal to you as one of the reasons to pursue your spiritual practices? What Ramana Maharshi said was, the greatest gift that you can give to the world is to realize who you truly are. What does he mean, gift to the world? Anybody have an idea what he means by gift to the world?
If I know myself better through meditation and yoga practices, then I can understand the world better around me. When I understand myself better, I have better understanding of the world around me, every being in this universe. I think
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else have anything to contribute about that? What does Ramana Maharshi mean? The greatest gift to the world that you can give to the world is to understand who you truly are. And how does this relate to what Swamiji is talking about?
So my understanding of that, based upon some things that I've read and learned to listen to, is essentially this whole idea of saving the world is asinine, because you don't understand what's going on anyway. All you can really do is save yourself and just be a light, and be a safe haven for people also to come to the light.
Yes. Perfect, Keith. Those who take refuge, it's said in the Chandi, those who take refuge in the mother themselves become a refuge to the world. And it isn't that they set out to do that. It isn't that they put a little signboard by their door saying, refuge here. No, it's simply that people are drawn to them. Things that they just say, things that they just do out of their understanding and compassion change the lives of others. Maybe in tiny ways, but very important ways. Thank you, Keith. Anything else from anyone? This is such an important point that the Swami is making.
Hi, so this is my first time joining.
Yes.
This is Chirag. So, I've been studying some of this and doing some meditation and things like that. And I feel that maybe the point here is infinite openness, right? So it kind of helps your ability, again, to communicate with people rather than just completely shut out ideas. And so being able to have open communication with somebody, putting your own ideas or ideals aside, is going to further that conversation, further your relationship, and I think just generally bring more, love and compassion into everything that we do.
Exactly. And it happens spontaneously. As you do your spiritual practices, as you discover who you are, what you've just described happens spontaneously. Yes, we can take a stand for it. We can begin to practice it before we have these profound realizations, and we should, if we have the faith that what we're being taught is true. We should take a stand for the fact that the divine is in every living being, and so therefore treat them in that fashion. And so not practice narrowness, practice openness, compassion. But as we do our spiritual practices, our self-identification spontaneously changes. This isn't something that happens in weeks. It isn't something that happens in months. You begin to get indications after hints and allegations, as they say, after some months. But it happens over years because we are so steeped in our own karma, in our own samskaras, that it takes a while for us to move off that and begin to recognize that power that Swamiji spoke of earlier in this talk, that infinite power within ourselves that is manifesting. And you get a sense, oh, this is who I truly am. All of this other is something that's happening in the presence of that. As Swami Prabhavananda put it, Swami Prabhavananda was my teacher, and he said, the chosen ideal, that is the form or formless aspect of God that appeals to your heart, the chosen ideal is you yourself, no different. Learn to feel that living presence. As you learn to feel that living presence, your identification, your self-identification changes from your small self to that infinite self. Motive power for your being. That is who you are truly, who you truly are. As it said in evening prayer, speech cannot hold thee nor mind, yet without thee we think not nor speak. So it's the motive power for our being. And so when Swamiji says, alone religion will become real and living, it will come into our very nature, live in our every movement, penetrate every pore of our society, and be infinitely more powerful for good than it has ever been before. And so your society may be small. It doesn't matter. Ultimately, as more and more people transform, the society itself will transform. That's a long time coming. As we can see, there's so much ache, so much pain, so much anguish and anxiety and disaffection in society now. How impossible this must seem. What is needed? The different type of they or
Shankara, you're freezing up again.
feeling between the different types of religion, seeing they I got that sign on the screen, so I'll read this again. What is needed is a fellow feeling between the different types of religion, seeing that they all stand or fall together. A feeling which springs from mutual esteem and mutual respect, not the condescending, patronizing, niggardly expression of goodwill, unfortunately in vogue present time with many. And that is, oh, they're all right. I guess they're all, but and they are something like that's what he's changed. Violent thing like what happened in France. And above all, this is needed between types of religious expression coming from the study of mental phenomena. Unfortunately, even now, laying exclusive claim to the name of religion, and those expressions of religion whose heads, as it were, are penetrating into the secrets of heaven, though their feet are clinging to the earth. I mean the so-called materialistic sciences. So I'm going to read that again. Above all, this is needed between types of religious expression coming from the study of mental phenomena. Swamiji means that those things of the left mind, when he says mental phenomena. Above all, this is needed between types of religious expression coming from the study of mental phenomena. Unfortunately, even now laying exclusive claim to the name of religion and those expressions of religion whose heads, as it were, are penetrating more into the secrets of heaven, though their feet are clinging to earth. I mean the so-called materialistic sciences. Now, Swamiji lived at the time in 1895, quantum physics was just about to emerge in the world. The men and women who were to become the first quantum physicists were alive at the time that Swamiji was delivering this talk and doing their studies. And this is the people who he means, whose heads, as it were, are penetrating more into the secrets of heaven. So some of them, like Schrodinger, became quite spiritual in their pursuit of science, but others not so much. To bring about this harmony, both will have to make concessions, sometimes very large. This harmony, both will have to make concessions, sometimes very large, nay, more, sometimes painful, but each will find itself the better for the sacrifice and more advanced in truth. And in the end, the knowledge which is confirmed, the knowledge which is confined within the domain of time and space will meet and become one with that which is beyond them both, where the mind and sciences cannot reach, the absolute, the infinite, the one without a second. Now, I don't know how many of you follow Scientific American. American is a publication that is meant to popularize and make available to all of us the most advanced findings of current science. Recently, in Scientific American, there was published an article, "Does Consciousness Pervade the Universe?" The scientists are beginning to study consciousness. And that's what Swamiji means. And in the end, knowledge which is confined within the domain of time and space will meet and become that become one with that which is beyond them both, where senses cannot reach the absolute, the infinite, the one without a second. So we have a few minutes left before 9 o'clock. Please, this is where we share with one another and help one another grow by sharing what we understand and the questions that arise in our minds because of what we're seeing, what we've heard here. So please, what have you heard? What has it given rise to?
Well, I was thinking about something that Swamiji said about the unity of all religions. He said that the proof of one religion depends on the proof of the rest. And, I was just thinking about Sri Ramakrishna, how he practiced every single religion and found that he was able to get to the truth through all of them.
Well, we
Whether that was
have to be a little careful, Divya. He didn't actually practice every single religion. He didn't actively practice Buddhism. He didn't actively practice Judaism, two of the major and prevalent religions at the time. He did practice Islam and Christianity.
Mhm.
So you're right in that he found the same truth in these as well as the many paths of Sanatana Dharma that he trod. I just
Yes,
wanted
but
to be a little careful about
Oh.
saying he practiced all religions. So your
Well,
point,
I
you
guess I
were
was
making a point though.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I just I was thinking, I guess I think of Sri Ramakrishna and Swami Vivekananda as father and son in many
Mhm.
ways.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't ever think of their ideas in isolation from one another. And Vivekananda, he was studying Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, of course, and even sects within Hinduism.
Mm-hmm.
Swamiji said that one thing that the master did was find a way to unite these warring sects of, Vaishnavites, Shaivites, and so on.
Mm.
And, what religion teaches us to injure one another? And the reason why I pointed to that quote was the idea that the proof of every religion is dependent on the rest, and that Hinduism, ultimately, for it to be Hinduism, must recognize that all religions that, offer faith and hope to man in times of despair are true. Because
Yes.
how can we, what right do we have to judge the faith, like we were talking about on Saturday? Never disturb the faith of a man, even if it is fanaticism. He says, I think at one point, because in Christ the Messenger, he has this idea that even the fanatic has this enormous amount of energy. It's just this lower form of bhakti, which has to be transmuted somehow.
Yes. And Swamiji said the true test of a religion's the test of a religion's truth is, does it produce saints? And of course, all of the major religions of the world have produced saints. Sects and fanaticism as Swamiji was pointing out, are, they have their place, but they stir the pot. But for each of us, the thing to do is, through our spiritual practices, allow ourselves to broaden out. Because as we do our spiritual practices, as we do our practices of concentration and come to know the contents of the waking mind, the waking awareness, and then as we begin to, as concentration deepens into meditation and we begin to understand the activities and contents of our active subconscious, these things that are us, encounter them, we see these are the things that are imprisoning me. They keep insisting on themselves. And so that then we see this is what I must renounce. This is what I must leave behind. Not push away, but simply move on and leave behind. So anything else from anyone? Thank you, Divya.
I think
Thank
Brother,
you.
it's Haima again.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry. It's about time Scientific America looks into the consciousness. I think it's high time, I feel. I'm glad they're looking into that.
Well, yes. How, and they've been forced to it
It's great.
because of the findings of quantum physics.
Yes,
They've found that consciousness
yes.
affects the outcome of their experiments.
I could see that. Yes.
And so they're forced to look at, and if consciousness, well, without going into quantum physics here this evening, it's 9 o'clock. Is there anything else that anyone? This is wonderful.
Thank
9 o'clock is no magic number. It's just, we can stop or not as you wish.
I
Anything else?
seem to recall some sage saying we should treat evil with indifference. And so
Yeah.
when we think of this teacher who was beheaded for showing pictures of Islam, we're shocked, but are we supposed to be indifferent towards that?
Well, it's not that we can condone it as an antisocial act, but ourselves, we do not condemn all of Islam because of the actions of some fanatic.
Right.
And it was Jesus that said, and it's been said by others, of course, but Jesus said, be indifferent.
Mm-hmm.
Our indifference is not inattention. It's simply that we don't allow it to capture us, to limit us, our
Right.
reaction to it. We have to be very careful to use our energy only on things that we can have an effect on, a direct effect on. Now, of course, prayer and our good wishes are unlimited. So to pray for the soul of that teacher, to pray that, for that matter, for the soul of that fanatic.
Yeah, that's a little more difficult. The teacher was 47 years old. I mean, young guy to lose his life.
Yeah. There's no doubt it was a horrible act. And it was meant to be a horrible act. It was meant to be exemplary. But if we acknowledge the divine within ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
we must acknowledge the divine even in the murderer. however misguided he was.
Mm.
And what do we wish for him? That he wake up, that he become aware of broader truths than the ones he's trapped within. They're a lower form of truth. As Vivekananda said, we do not move from error to truth. We move, if you will, from lower truth to higher truth. So it costs us nothing to sincerely acknowledge the divinity that exists even in that murderer,
Mm.
and pray for that person's awakening.
Okay, I'll try, but that's difficult. I'll try.
I just wanted to, on that point, I was thinking about the Sermon on the Mount
Uh-huh.
again, and what Jesus says about murder. And again, going back to Vivekananda, he says even a murderer has a conscience. And I think even this was an exemplary act. But even if we just think of murder in general in society, wherever we are, he says, you have heard that it was said to the people long ago, thou shalt not murder, and anyone who murders will be subject to judgment. But I tell you that anyone who is angry with a brother or sister will be subject to judgment. Again, anyone who says to a brother or sister, Raka, is answerable to court, and anyone who says, you fool, will be in danger of the fire of hell.
Yes, but this is so easy to misinterpret. It isn't that yes, of course, he means karma. That if you evil comes to them who evil think and do. But far more importantly, far more importantly, in the long run, for the individual, is if you practice judgment, you are limiting yourself and you are limiting your infinitude. It isn't that we don't observe and correctly assess things. That's very different than judgment, as Jesus was talking about it. Judgment is a way to box things up and keep them at arm's length so we don't have to deal with them.
So I think what I'm hearing is we don't have the right to judge this murderer ourselves. That's not our place.
Because you have the perfect right, but then you have the right to the consequences as well, as Krishna explains very explicitly in chapter 3 of the Gita. If you practice that judgment, then you will, as Divya just pointed out, you will yourself be judged. That is karma. As you sow, so shall ye reap. But if you can be indifferent and say to yourself, this too is true, and it is a higher truth, and practice that truth, emphasize within yourself that truth, then you are freeing yourself from limitation. The more we practice anger and the idea of vengeance,
Right,
the more we're limiting ourselves.
right. That's true. It's hard, but that's true.
It's not hard, Ramadas. It's not hard. All that is, what is within you that is saying it is hard is an insistence that that way is right. So just look at that and say, you, this voice that says it is hard and wants to insist that practicing vengeance and anger in the face of such things is proper, is a way that has manifested in you as a limitation. Now, there's no one who's saying, and most emphatically not me saying, that that's bad and wrong. It's just simply limiting. And if our goal is freedom, then we will not say it's hard. We'll say it's easy, but I don't want to do it. It's simple, but I don't want to do it because I'm going to insist that this way of limitation that I'm living in is comfortable for me. Freedom is uncomfortable. There's no two ways about it. Ultimately, it is the joy of a bird in flight. But in the beginning, it's uncomfortable because we're not used to it. Thank you for that, Brahmadas. That your honesty and your straightforwardness are a great gift to us all. Anything else from anyone? Okay. Well, next week we'll take up chapter 2. And at Cindy's suggestion, I'm going to be in conversation with some of you to help with the reading. Because as you can see, I have difficulty with the reading. And I need to recruit some readers who are good readers, who are practiced readers, skilled readers, and have them read with their understanding that I will interrupt them from time to time as I interrupt myself as I'm reading. And so during the coming week between now and next Wednesday, there'll be some conversations with some of you. So glad you came this evening to hear Swamiji's wonderful message about the necessity of religion and the necessity of what religion must become. And as I said, that it's not something that happens somewhere else. It happens within each one of us. That transformation that Swamiji is talking about is not something that we will see happening in society. We will be the society that makes it happen. Give me 10 men who are, this is an old misogynistic song, and the phrasing is male-centered, but it's a powerful song. Give me 10 men who are stout-hearted men, and I'll soon give you 10,000 more. And stout-hearted has deep meaning in the context of Swamiji. Nerves of steel, muscles of iron. Anything else from anyone before we close out?
I wanted to ask you, Brother Shankara, about the Durga Puja.
Yes.
About you had said if we wanted to sing, to send you an email.
Yes, please.
I had actually sent you a message. I don't know if you received it, but I just wanted to check in with you.
Did you send me an email or text message?
I sent you an email.
Oh, good. Well, no, I didn't spend a lot of time with my email today, but I will be in touch with you.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Divya. Thank you for your wanting to sing. And I'll put you in touch with Aditya. And
Wonderful.
that's what will happen after I respond to you. When I respond to you, I will copy Aditya, so then Aditya will get in touch with you about when to sing.
Okay.
Okay. Breaker of this world's chain, we adore thee, whom all men love. Spotless, taking man's form, thou art above the gunas three. Knowledge divine, not flesh. Thou whom the cosmos wears, a diamond at its heart. Let us look deep in thine eyes. They are bright with the wisdom of God that can wake us from Maya's spell. Let us hold fast to thy feet, treading the waves of the world to safety. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace, peace. Peace be unto us and to all beings everywhere. Om Hari Om Tat Sat. So, Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ji Ki Jai, Durga Durga Durga. May you be safe, may you be healthy, may you be cheerful. Please go in Mother's loving and protective embrace until we see one another next time.
Thank you, Brother Shankara.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
I don't know.